Ottawa, September 6, 1945, 11:30 at night, 511 Somerset Street West, a two-story brick apartment building across from Dundonald Park. Inside apartment 4, Igor Gouzenko stands frozen, pregnant wife beside him, toddler son sleeping in a neighbor's care. They're watching through a keyhole. Across the narrow hallway, 4 Soviet embassy officials are ransacking their apartment, papers flying, furniture crashing, the sound of splintered wood where they forced the door with a crowbar. Vitaly Pavlov leads the search. NKVD station chief, posing as second secretary. He's looking for something specific. 109 stolen documents, 250,000 pages of Soviet secrets stuffed under a Cipher Clerk's shirt 24 hours earlier. Documents that prove Joseph Stalin ordered atomic bomb espionage as his #1 priority. Documents naming 26 Soviet agents penetrating Canadian and American institutions. Documents that will shatter the Western world's illusions about their wartime ally. The Soviets know Gouzenko has them. They don't know he's watching from 10 feet away. A constable from Ottawa police arrives, confronts Pavlov directly. "What are you doing in this apartment?" Pavlov doesn't hesitate. "We are looking for papers that belong to the Russian embassy. The owner is out of town and gave us permission." The constable points to the shattered doorframe. This does not look as if it has been done with a key. Diplomatic immunity, raised voices, international incident. The Soviets leave empty-handed. Across the hall, Igor Gouzenko exhales. He walked out of the Soviet embassy with documents that will define the next 50 years. But for 48 hours, nobody would listen. Not the newspapers, not the Justice Department, not even the Prime Minister. Tonight, Soviet agents proved he was right to defect. Tomorrow, the West will finally believe him. 3 days after World War II ended, a 26-year-old Cipher Clerk chose freedom, and the Cold War began. Before this operation goes dark, subscribe. We're following the trail they tried to bury. Moscow, 1942. Igor Sergeyevich Gouzenko works in what used to be a ballroom, pre-revolutionary mansion, high ceilings, elegant architecture. Now the headquarters of GRU, Soviet Military Intelligence, 40 Cipher Clerks. 3 shifts, around the clock, encoding messages for Soviet intelligence stations worldwide, decoding replies, the nervous system of Stalin's espionage apparatus. Gouzenko is 23 years old, born January 26, 1919, in the village of Rogachev, near Moscow. His father died fighting for the Bolsheviks in the Russian Civil War. His mother taught mathematics, barely kept the family fed during the famines. He studied architecture at Moscow Architectural Institute, met his future wife Svetlana at the Lenin Library, both trained as Red Army intelligence officers. Both believers in the Soviet system. The war made Gouzenko valuable, his cipher work flawless, his loyalty unquestioned, his silence absolute. Colonel Nikolai Zabotin noticed. Charming, war hero, Stalingrad survivor. Zabotin ran GRU operations in North America from Ottawa. Needed a trusted cipher clerk, someone reliable, someone skilled, someone who understood the importance of secrecy. He chose Gouzenko, June 25, 1943. Gouzenko arrived in Ottawa, Soviet embassy on Charlotte Street, Canada's capital, Allied headquarters for coordinating intelligence against Nazi Germany. His salary was exceptional, $275 Canadian per month. More money than he'd ever imagined. His wife Svetlana arrived that October. Their son Andrei born shortly after. Everything about Canada stunned him. The food, restaurants everywhere, stores overflowing with goods. Fresh oranges in crates at the train station. He'd tasted an orange once in his entire life. The freedom. People spoke openly, criticized their government without fear. Multiple political parties competing for votes. Real elections with actual choices. Their apartment, comfortable, private, space for a family. In Moscow, 4 or 5 families would share the same space. Gouzenko wrote later, the unbelievable supplies of food, the restaurants, the movies, the wide-open stores, the absolute freedom of the people combined to create the impression of a dream from which I must surely awaken. The contrast grew sharper. Every cipher message he processed revealed the gap between Soviet propaganda and Soviet reality. Messages about recruiting spies in Allied governments. Messages about stealing atomic secrets. Messages about manipulating Western political parties. The system he'd believed in looked different from Ottawa, especially the elections. Canada held federal elections in 1945. Gouzenko watched genuine democracy unfold. Multiple candidates, real debates, voters exercising actual power, winners and losers determined by ballots, not bullets. He thought about Soviet elections, one candidate per position, one party controlling everything, voting as theater, democracy as lie. In comparison with them, the system of elections in Russia appears as a mockery of the conception of free elections, he later testified. The fact that in elections in the Soviet Union, one candidate is put forward so that the possibilities of choice are eliminated speaks for itself. But understanding wasn't enough. He had a wife, a son, Another child coming. Comfortable apartment. Good salary. Access to privileges ordinary Soviets never experienced. Leaving meant losing everything. Until Moscow made the decision for him. September 1944, 1 year after arriving. A message from Moscow. Coded. Urgent. Gouzenko read it. Decoded it. Understood its meaning immediately. Recall to USSR. Effective immediately. 14 months into a 3-year assignment. No explanation, no justification, just orders. Terror. In Stalin's Soviet Union, unexpected recall meant suspicion. Suspicion meant interrogation. Interrogation at Lubyanka prison, the basement cells where careers ended and lives disappeared. Gouzenko knew the statistics, knew the purges, knew that loyal service meant nothing when paranoia struck. One anonymous denunciation, one bureaucratic error, one wrong word overheard. Any excuse sufficed. Colonel Zabotin intervened, argued the recall was premature. Gouzenko's replacement wasn't ready, the cipher work too sensitive, the timing too critical. Moscow delayed, but didn't cancel. For 11 months, Gouzenko lived with the sword hanging. Every message from Moscow could be the final order. Every day could be his last in freedom. July 1945, his replacement arrived. Lieutenant Kulikov, trained, ready, eager. Kulikov would take over September 6th, Thursday. Gouzenko's last day with vault access would be Wednesday, September 5th. The deadline crystallized everything. If he stayed, he'd return to Soviet Union, face unknown fate, raise his children under Stalin's system, never experience freedom again. If he defected, he'd protect his family, give them the life he'd discovered in Canada. But he'd need proof, evidence to convince Western authorities, documents that proved Soviet espionage. Svetlana made the decision simple, pregnant with their second child. Understanding what return meant, understanding what freedom meant. She told him, go into the vault and steal every secret thing you can put your hands on, and change the combination on the vault, and lock the door. Turn yourself over to the Canadians. September 5th, 1945, Wednesday evening, unusually warm weather, his last chance. The vault at the Soviet embassy contained everything. GRU operations across North America, agent networks, communication protocols, espionage successes, future operations. September 5th, approximately 8 to 9 o'clock in the evening, Gouzenko entered the vault for the last time. He selected documents methodically, proof of espionage, names of agents, evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away, 3 complete GRU dossiers on Canadian agents, 33 telegrams between Ottawa and Moscow, notes in Colonel Zabotin's handwriting, pages from Zabotin's personal notebook, mailing lists proving agent connections, information on Allied weapons systems, technical intelligence on radar and explosives, and atomic secrets, documents proving Soviet penetration of the Manhattan Project, codenames, British scientist Alec passing uranium samples and bomb designs, details on Trinity test, the first atomic explosion, information about Hiroshima bomb specifications, quantities of nuclear materials at Oak Ridge and Hanford, 109 documents total, approximately 250 pages. The problem was concealment. Summer evening, warm weather. He wore a shirt, no jacket to hide the bulk. There were almost 100 documents, some of them small scraps of paper, and others covering several large sheets of stationery, he recalled. The documents felt like they weighed a ton, and I imagined that they were bulging out from under my shirt. Nobody stopped him leaving the embassy. Nobody checked. Nobody suspected. He walked to the Ottawa Journal newspaper office. Night editor Chester Froud, working late. Gouzenko approached the desk. Short, tubby, white as a sheet, broken English, desperate. It's war. It's war. It's Russia. Froud couldn't understand him. 10 minutes of confusion, frustration, the story of the century sitting in front of him, and he couldn't grasp it. Froud sent him to RCMP headquarters, suggested they might help. The Ottawa Journal refused the scoop. 9:30 at night. Department of Justice building on Wellington Street, closed. Security guard suggested returning in the morning. Gouzenko walked home to 511 Somerset Street West, clutching 109 documents under his shirt, knowing Soviet security would discover the theft by morning, knowing nobody believed him yet. September 6th, 1945, 9 o'clock in the morning, Gouzenko returned to Department of Justice, this time brought Svetlana and toddler Andrei, reasoning that a family seeking help looked more credible than a lone man with wild claims. His English remained broken, his accent heavy, his story sounded fantastic. Soviet espionage, atomic secrets, Stalin spying on allies. 3 months after defeating Hitler together, these claims seemed impossible. Officials didn't know what to make of him. Sent him to Parliament Hill. Suggested speaking with Minister of Justice Louis Saint Laurent. Terrible timing. First peacetime opening of Parliament since the 1930s. Governor General delivering throne speech. Military bands. Crowds. Ceremony. Nobody had time for a frantic Russian Cipher Clerk. He was told to return to Justice Building. Wait. For 2 hours he waited. Nothing happened. At one point, according to official records, he threatened suicide. Still nothing. 10:45 that morning. Miles away. Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie King arrived at his office. Undersecretary for External External Affairs, Norman Robertson waiting with urgent news. A terrible thing has happened, King's diary recorded his reaction. It was like a bomb on top of everything else. 70 years old, exhausted from 6 years wartime leadership. Victory over Germany achieved. Now this, evidence that the ally against Hitler was spying on Canada. King's response shocked Robertson. If Gouzenko commits suicide, leave it to local police, but secure the documents first. I said to both Robertson and Wrong that I thought we should be extremely careful in becoming a party to any course of action which would link the Govt of Canada up with this matter in a manner which might cause Russia to feel that we had performed an unfriendly act. Translation: let the man die. Don't offend Stalin. Canada's government chose Soviet feelings over a defector's life. Gouzenko tried the Ottawa Journal again. Reporter Leslie Johnstone examined translated documents, returned quickly. We're not interested, she suggested, applying for citizenship at the RCMP Bureau of Naturalization. The afternoon breakthrough came at Crown Attorney's office. Secretary Fernanda Coulson listened, actually listened, believed him, worked the phones for hours, called the Ottawa Journal, confirmed documents looked genuine, but they couldn't help. Called RCMP, they declined on King's orders. Called Prime Minister's office, told to turn Gouzenko away. Called Le Droit newspaper, no luck. Finally, RCMP Inspector John Leopold agreed to meet 9:30 tomorrow morning. By late afternoon, the Soviets knew. Gouzenko spotted 2 men watching his apartment from across the street. Someone knocked on his door, called his name. He recognized the voice. Under-Lieutenant Lavrentiev from the embassy. They knew he was missing. They knew about the documents. They were coming. Gouzenko left his toddler son with neighbor Harold Main, RCF corporal living next door. Could hear panicked voices through thin walls, but didn't understand Russian. Another neighbor, Frances Elliott, offered refuge. Her apartment directly across the hall from Gouzenko's. She'd hide the family, keep them safe. Main bicycled to contact police. Gouzenko feared his phone was tapped. 2 Ottawa constables arrived, listened to his story, appeared to already know the situation, said nothing could be done, but they agreed to patrol overnight. Unknown to Gouzenko, RCMP officers stationed themselves in Dundonald Park across the street, watching the building, under orders not to intervene, but watching. Shortly after midnight, a Soviet driver pounded on Gouzenko's apartment door, left when nobody answered. Then at 11:30, 4 men arrived. Vitaly Pavlov, NKVD station chief in Canada, officially second secretary at embassy, Lieutenant Colonel Vasily Rogov, assistant military attaché, Colonel Zabotin's deputy, Lieutenant Pavel Angelov, NKVD agent, Farafontov, junior NKVD operative. They forced Gouzenko's door with a crowbar. The wooden frame splintered, lock shattered. Inside Frances Elliott's apartment, Igor and Svetlana Gouzenko, pressed against their neighbor's door, watched through the keyhole. 10 feet away, Soviet agents ransacking their home, papers flying, furniture overturned, drawers dumped, mattress slashed, their lives being torn apart. Elliott called Ottawa police. Constable Walsh arrived within minutes, confronted Pavlov directly. "What are you doing in this apartment?" Pavlov's response was immediate, confident, arrogant. "We are looking for papers that belong to the Russian embassy. The owner is out of town and gave us permission to get what we wanted." Walsh pointed to the destroyed doorframe. "This does not look as if it has been done with a key. You must have used a bit of pressure to get in, and from the marks on the door you did not put them there with your fingers." The Soviets became aggressive, claimed diplomatic immunity, argued jurisdiction, international law, embassy property. The confrontation escalated, raised voices, legal threats. 4 Soviet intelligence officers versus 1 Ottawa constable. Across the street, RCMP officers watched. Under Prime Minister King's orders, they didn't intervene, didn't arrest, didn't protect. They watched. Eventually, the 4 Soviets left, empty-handed, frustrated, knowing Gouzenko had the documents but couldn't locate them. Through the keyhole, Igor and Svetlana watched them leave. That break-in changed everything. September 7th, morning. The midnight raid gave Norman Robertson what he needed. Evidence of Soviet desperation, proof they'd violated Canadian law, breaking and entering, forced entry, destruction of property. More importantly, proof that Gouzenko's claims weren't delusions. The Soviets wouldn't break into an apartment for nothing. Robertson finally ordered RCMP to take the Gouzenko family into protective custody. Some accounts credit William Stevenson, legendary British spy master, codename Intrepid, with convincing Robertson. Stevenson happened to be staying at Chateau Montebello nearby. Whether coincidence or intelligence coordination, his influence mattered. At RCMP headquarters, Gouzenko was in a highly agitated and emotionally disturbed state, close to a nervous collapse. Official report noted his speech was rather incoherent, and his train of thought and expression were confused to the point of being extremely difficult to comprehend. 48 hours of terror, rejection, running, watching Soviet agents ransack his home, protecting his pregnant wife and toddler toddler son, wondering if anyone would listen. Now finally, protection. The Soviets played their hand brilliantly. Ambassador Georgy Zarubin sent a formal letter to External Affairs, accused Gouzenko of stealing money, not documents, from the embassy, demanded Canadian authorities find and arrest the thief. Robertson played along perfectly, apologized for police behavior during the break-in investigation, assured every effort would be made to locate Gouzenko. RCMP issued a fake nationwide bulletin with descriptions of the Gouzenko family. The documents. Robertson kept them in a box in his desk drawer, a box that originally contained Corby rye whiskey. The case became known as the Corby case. Gouzenko's official code name, Corby. The whiskey box that changed history. 109 documents, 250 pages, 26 Soviet agents exposed. Robertson's assessment to Prime Minister King. Everything is much worse than we would have believed. The documents disclose an espionage system on a large scale. The network penetrated everything: National Research Council, Department of External Affairs, Canadian Armed Forces, Bank of Canada, British High Commission, even Parliament. Sitting member Fred Rose was a Soviet agent, but the worst revelation concerned atomic secrets. Dr. Alan Nunn May, British nuclear physicist, codename Alec, working at Montreal Laboratory on joint British-Canadian-American nuclear project. May passed Soviet handlers small samples of uranium-233 and uranium-235, approximately 162 micrograms, enough to analyze, enough to understand, enough to accelerate Soviet atomic bomb development by years. Technical information on atomic reactors, design specifications, material requirements, engineering challenges overcome, details on Trinity test, first atomic bomb explosion, New Mexico, July 16, 1945, blast yield, radiation effects, weapon performance, details on Hiroshima bomb, August 6, 1945, design specifications, explosive force, casualty estimates, quantities of nuclear materials at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Hanford, Washington, production rates, stockpile sizes, future capabilities. For this betrayal, May received $200 cash, which he reportedly burned, and 2 bottles of whiskey. Soviet intelligence considered it cheap. May was arrested March 4, 1946, outside King's College, London. Convicted. 10 years hard labor. Other arrests followed. The network unraveled. Fred Rose, only communist member of parliament ever elected in Canada. 6 years imprisonment. Gordon Lunan, codename Back, Canadian Army captain, cell handler. 5 years. Raymond Boyer, the professor, McGill chemistry professor, explosives expert. 2 years. Emma Wicken, codename Nora, first woman imprisoned for espionage in Canada. 2.5 years. Kathleen Wilshire, codename Ellie, UK High Commission Deputy Registrar. 3 years. 18 Canadians, 8 British subjects, 26 total agents, all exposed by 109 documents. Gouzenko also identified another agent, codename Ellie, operating inside British intelligence itself, possibly MI5 Director General Roger Hollis. Never conclusively proven, never fully investigated. The mystery remains. But September 12, 1945, exactly 1 week after Gouzenko walked out of the Soviet embassy, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover sent an urgent message to President Harry Truman. 3 explosive claims Stalin made obtaining atomic bomb secrets the #1 project of Soviet espionage. A British scientist working in Canada was a Soviet agent. An assistant to an assistant secretary of state in Washington was a paid Soviet spy. The third allegation pointed to Alger Hiss, though proving it would take years. The chain Gouzenko started led everywhere. Klaus Fuchs, Harry Gold, David Greenglass, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, Elizabeth Bentley, Venona decryptions. Every major Cold War spy case traced back to September 1945, to 109 documents, to a 26-year-old Cipher Clerk who chose freedom, February 3, 1946. 5 months of silence. NBC radio host Drew Pearson broke the story. This is Drew Pearson with a flash from Washington. Canada's Prime Minister Mackenzie King has informed President Truman of a very serious situation affecting our relations with Russia. A Soviet agent surrendered some time ago to Canadian authorities and confessed a gigantic Russian espionage network inside the United States. The leak came from Hoover. Almost certainly, FBI director routinely leaked information about suspected communists to friendly journalists. Pearson was friendly, the story too valuable to bury. February 15th, 1946, 6 o'clock in the morning, simultaneous raids across Canada, 13 arrests, coordinated, precise, based on Gouzenko's evidence. The Kellogg-Taschereau Royal Commission received its mandate February 5th, Order in Council PC 411, investigate Soviet espionage, identify perpetrators, assess damage, protect Canadian security. The commission eventually produced a 733-page report, detailed Soviet penetration of Canadian institutions, confirmed Gouzenko's warnings, led to 39 arrests and 18 convictions across Canada and Britain. Critics challenged the commission's methods. Suspects held without counsel, questioned without lawyers, rights suspended under emergency powers. An emergency committee for civil rights formed, compared the proceedings to 1649 tribunals, star chambers. Justice sacrificed for security. But the evidence was undeniable. The espionage network real. The Soviet threat confirmed. Gouzenko's complete testimony filled 6,000 pages, remained classified until 1981. 36 years of secrecy, protecting sources, protecting methods, protecting ongoing investigations. The Cold War had begun. The Gouzenko family disappeared into protection. First to vacation cabins outside Ottawa, then Otter Lake Cottage near Smiths Falls. October 1945, relocated to Camp X, the top-secret wartime spy training school near Whitby, Ontario. Svetlana gave birth to their daughter Evelyn in December 1945, in a safe house, under guard, her husband a ghost. Eventually they settled in Port Credit, Ontario, now part of Mississauga. Small house on 2 acres. Constant RCMP surveillance. New identities, George and Anna Brown. Their children, eventually 8 total, raised believing they were Czech immigrants named Krysak. Supported Czechoslovakia in hockey games. Learned the truth between ages 16 and 18, one by one. Family secret revealed when mature enough to understand. January 1954, Drew Pearson television interview. Gouzenko appeared wearing a pillowcase over his head, eye holes cut, voice disguised. The hood became his trademark. Every public appearance, every interview, every photograph, protecting his identity, protecting his family, protecting his life. I have not the slightest doubt that Soviet authorities would like to see him killed, he explained. His caution proved justified. Late 1960s, KGB sleeper agent assigned to assassinate Gouzenko. The agent defected to RCMP instead, warned of the plot. Gouzenko's vigilance validated. The cost to his family in USSR was devastating. His mother died in NKVD custody. Lubyanka prison basement. Interrogation about her son. She died there. Svetlana's father, 5 years imprisonment. Her mother, 5 years. Her sister, 5 years. All punished for Igor's choice. Svetlana's niece Tatiana sent to orphanage, raised by the state, punished for her uncle's defection. 1948. Gouzenko published This Was My Choice, memoir, defection story, warning to the West, adapted into the film The Iron Curtain, starring Dana Andrews and Gene Tierney. 1954. Novel The Fall of a Titan, won Governor General's Literary Award, nominated for Nobel Prize in Literature. Critical success. Commercial success. Proof he could write. He spent 25 years on a second novel, never sent it to a publisher, never finished to his satisfaction. Diabetes developed, complications worsened, eventually went completely blind, wrote on Braille typewriter, dictated to Svetlana, continued working despite disability. He insisted on being called escaper, not defector. Defector implied traitor, escaper implied hero. Semantics mattered, identity mattered, legacy mattered. June 25, 1982, heart attack, age 63. Mississauga, Ontario. CBC reported, like his life for the past 37 years, Gouzenko's death is shrouded in mystery. The RCMP would reveal only that he is dead and already buried. His grave at Spring Creek Cemetery remained unmarked for 20 years. Svetlana died September 4th, 2001. Finally, a headstone erected, bearing their birth names. Epitaph in English, We Chose Freedom for Mankind. September 5th, 1945. The date historians mark as the Cold War's beginning. Not Yalta, not Potsdam, not Churchill's Iron Curtain speech. 109 documents stuffed under a Cipher Clerk's shirt. Historian Jack Granatstein called it the beginning of the Cold War for public opinion. Journalist Robert Fulford went further. I am absolutely certain the Cold War began in Ottawa. Before Gouzenko, Stalin was Uncle Joe, heroic wartime ally, leader who helped defeat Hitler, partner in victory. After Gouzenko, the illusion shattered. Americans and Canadians understood. Stalin was spying on allies, stealing atomic secrets, penetrating governments, preparing for confrontation. The Soviet response revealed their understanding. Stalin's deputy Lavrenti Beria sent urgent cable to every Soviet intelligence station worldwide. G's defection has caused great damage to our country and has, in particular, very greatly complicated our work in the American countries. Historian Amy Knight wrote, his defection was the tipping point that shattered what had become a widespread and even optimistic complacency about the Soviets. 2002, Canada designated the Gouzenko Affair, 1945-46, an event of national historic significance. Plaques erected, memorials established. Recognition finally official, Dundonald Park, across from 511 Somerset Street West, where one family watched through a keyhole, where Soviet agents broke down a door, where the Cold War began. The plaque commemorates the moment. The apartment building remains. The park preserves the memory. Gouzenko's daughter Evelyn Wilson spoke at the 80th anniversary commemoration, September 2025. Explained her father's mission simply, they wanted to warn the West, that's it, full stop. 109 documents, one 26-year-old cipher clerk, one one desperate 48-hour flight, one midnight break-in, one choice between tyranny and freedom. The documents exposed 26 Soviet agents, revealed atomic espionage, triggered dozens of prosecutions, launched counterintelligence reforms, accelerated nuclear arms race, shaped 5 decades of global confrontation. FBI Director Hoover warned President Truman within 1 week. British physicist arrested within 6 months. American spy cases followed for years. Rosenberg's, Hiss, Fuchs, Bentley. The cascade never stopped. McCarthy era, spy fever, security clearances, loyalty oaths, Venona Project, all traced back to September 1945. Some historians credit Hoover with distorting Gouzenko's statements, using defection to demonize Soviets, setting McCarthyism in motion, exploiting genuine threat for political purposes. Others argue the threat was real, the espionage networks existed, the atomic secrets were stolen, the warning was necessary. Both perspectives contain truth. The espionage was real, 26 agents, atomic secrets, penetration of Allied governments, Soviet intelligence operating on massive scale. The political exploitation was real. Hoover leaked strategically. Politicians weaponized fear. Rights were violated. Innocents were accused. Paranoia exceeded proportion. But the fundamental reality remains. Without Gouzenko's courage, the West would have remained blind. Soviet espionage would have continued undetected. Atomic secrets would have flowed to Moscow unchecked. The post-war world would have developed very differently. One man's choice, September 5, 1945, the night the Cold War began. Ottawa, 511, Somerset Street West, midnight, September 6, 1945. 4 Soviet intelligence officers broke down a door with a crowbar, ransacked an apartment searching for stolen documents. Confronted by one Ottawa constable, left empty-handed. 10 feet away, Igor and Svetlana Gouzenko watched through a keyhole. Pregnant wife, toddler son sleeping in neighbor's apartment. 109 documents hidden, their lives destroyed but their family saved. 48 hours earlier, Gouzenko walked out of the Soviet embassy, 250,000 pages of secrets under his summer shirt. Nobody believed him. Ottawa Journal refused the story. Justice Department closed for the night. Prime Minister ordered officials to turn him away, but the midnight break-in proved he was telling the truth. September 12, 1 week later, FBI Director Hoover warned President Truman. Stalin made atomic bomb secrets his #1 espionage priority. A British scientist at Montreal Laboratory was a Soviet agent. The network reached into Washington. February 15, 1946, 13 arrests at 6 o'clock in the morning. The network unraveled. 39 arrests total, 18 convictions, 733-page Royal Commission report. Alan Nunn May arrested, Klaus Fuchs identified, Harry Gold revealed, Rosenberg's exposed, Elizabeth Bentley confirmed. The cascade continued for years. Gouzenko lived 37 years in hiding. George Brown, pillowcase hood, constant RCMP protection, 8 children raised believing they were Czech immigrants, blind from diabetes, writing on Braille typewriter, died June 25, 1982, his grave unmarked for 20 years, until Svetlana died, then finally a headstone, their true names, their chosen epitaph, we chose freedom for mankind. The cost was immense. His mother died in Lubyanka prison, Svetlana's parents imprisoned 5 years, her sister imprisoned, her niece sent to orphanage, all punished for one man's choice, but the warning succeeded. The West understood. Soviet espionage exposed, atomic secrets protected, counterintelligence strengthened, the complacency shattered. Historians debate when the Cold War began. Yalta, Potsdam, the Iron Curtain speech. But Jack Granatstein and Robert Fulford know the truth. The Cold War began in Ottawa, September 5, 1945, when a 26-year-old Cipher Clerk stuffed 109 documents under his shirt and chose freedom. The Cold War that defined 5 decades. The nuclear standoff that shaped the world. The espionage battles that consumed generations, all trace back to one moment, one choice, one man who believed freedom mattered more than security. Igor Gouzenko, the Cipher Clerk who started the Cold War. The truth won, but only because someone uncovered it. Subscribe and stay in the shadows with us.